Hi, our guest speaker today is Joe Stiles. I've known Joe longer than he's known me. I've known him about 10 years. I met his wife and him. Linda was presenting at a job search ministry, did a really good job, and we were helping her pack up, and there was Joe. And then it's kind of, the reason I ramble into that is it's kind of how I ended up here. So Joe hosts a Christian networking meeting once a month, and we used to meet at the Warner Grass Presbyterian Church. And I attended one time at the request of our mutual friend, Doug Thorpe, and kept coming back. So this was like 7, 8 years ago. And there I met Mary Ann Starrett, remember here, and she came and visited the center. We talked about it. And one day she had a guest speaker canceled, and we provided a guest speaker, which was a gentleman that was doing citizenship training. And at that time, James Brown was the president, and he started accosting me. And I kept saying no. And it took a year, so by the time I said yes, Dan Munson's the president. And Dan Munson was just accepted last week to the board for the center. So it all just comes around full circle. And now I get to introduce Joe. So Joe and I have a similar start in our lives. We were in the Air Force, enlisted back in the Vietnam era. And nobody attacked his base in Arkansas while he was successful at doing his job. And he had 49 years in the mortgage industry, and retired within the last few years. And he's been volunteering at the USO for quite a while. I've heard some of his stories about it. It's quite moving, and it's a very important job. I remember being in boot camp in San Antonio and walking out and going into the USO, and it was a big relief. And I don't want to take any more of his thunder. I'll let him speak.
Looking for brothers. Anybody else been in the Air Force?
He means the Air Force.
Yes.
My brother, 20 years, my brother,
Oh, really?
and his son, 20 years.
Wow. I'm sure he is well acquainted with USO.
Oh, my dad was in the Army Air Corps.
Mine was too.
Yeah.
Brown Shoes Air Force, we used to call it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Roger and I have been volunteering at the USO hobby for a number of years now. And it goes back to my experience, and I'm sure this is true of Roger, that it's time for payback. I have fond memories of being able to get to the USO. The one I attended most often was there in downtown San Antonio. And it was always a nice, warm, friendly place to just unwind and spend some time. So in 2011, March of 2011, I thought, okay, it's time for paybacks now. And that began my volunteer with the USO. Now, Roger and I are going to add some personal experience that keeps us coming back month after month, year after year. But let me give you the highlights of what the USO that you see in the handout is the 4 key elements of the USO. It delivers services to the active duty personnel, internet, holiday fun times. We all know about Bob Hope and the entertainment aspect. It keeps families and active duty personnel connected regardless of where the military person is serving. And it transitioned both, and this is true of all branches, people that are getting out, going TDY, it just transitioned him to the family. Now, in that transition are those that are coming back having given all. And I'll tell you a quick story. I did, it was a welcome home ceremony. A active duty guy was killed in the Middle East, and they brought him through Hobby Airport. So there were a group of us that came out, and they had the water cannons over the plane as they came in, unloaded the casket into military hearse to the family. And it was extremely touching, heartwarming, because I stepped up, walked over to the family to express our condolences and just thanking for their son's sacrifice. And they were very, very grateful, humble. Talk about humble, I was the one that's humble. But as I turned to walk back to our group, I had tears rolling down my eyes. The part that keeps us all, how many, do you know how many USO facilities there are in the metro area? One? There's four.
4? I was about to say, I'm looking at
Oh,
your notes over here.
Yes. You could guess, Bush, since I already told you we serve at Hobby. Oh, don't do that. Where are the other two?
Ellington?
Ellington? The other one is the induction center downtown. So those are all manned by volunteers. Everyone that you'll meet inside the USO. There are 4 employees of USO Houston, and it covers a district from Huntsville to Beaumont, to College Station, and down to Galveston. 4 employees. And they're not highly paid. Up until COVID struck, the USO Houston district was the only self-sustaining district in the US. Everything changed last year, but it was a model that was being promoted around. Now, what keeps me, Jim, to key off on your prayer about giving more than self. If you look up 1 Peter 4:10, write that one down so you'll look it up. It is, in everyday terms, whatever your gifts are, use those gifts to serve others first. And there was a visitor to the USO on one evening. He was a colonel, a retired colonel, Air Force guy, and he came in kind of quiet demeanor. Sometimes when you read people, you just know they don't want to engage in conversation. They just want some quiet downtime. So I showed him where the food and water and drinks and coffee and things were, and he sat down. So after a short while, I went to check on him, just to see how he was doing. And I happened to notice he had on one of those hospital bands, or it looked like a hospital band. And he saw me looking at the band, and all of a sudden he just perked up and said, I just came from MD Anderson. And I thought, oh, shoot, I'm gonna hear a really ugly story. What he told me, and I'm getting to your point, was giving back, giving first. He had been diagnosed, I think he was from San Antonio. He had been diagnosed with inoperable cancer. No choice. He went to MD Anderson for a second opinion. Same story, second opinion. No treatment options. So what he told MD Anderson was, I am your guinea pig. I don't care what it is. I don't care what you're treating. I'm your guinea pig. I will test it for you. And he was just on his way back home from one of those experimental treatments. That touched my heart. And that was an example of giving back. The other one, you got a little poop sheet from a guy named Trevor. Usually the USO is manned, so to speak, by two people. And this particular night, I was the only one there. Get a call mid-evening, 7, 8 o'clock. And just like the little email that he sent, unbeknownst to me, to the USO, that highlighted what his needs were, because his wife was coming from Phoenix to go to Texas Children, and he had received phone calls from Texas Children and Ronald McDonald House that he thought he had reservations in, saying, we can't accept your wife because she's traveling by herself. She has a child she's carrying with spina bifida. And Texas Children is one of the few hospitals in the nation that will operate on the baby in the womb. And they had declined because she would be unescorted. And he said, can you help? I was stumbling. So I asked him, which Texas Children? There's 4 of them. He had no clue. He lives in Phoenix. He is a truck driver, and at the time he was in California as well, trying to board a plane in Phoenix. So I said, I don't know the answer, but I know somebody. So I called the person I knew that worked inside at a high level of Texas Children. I didn't have her phone number. So I called somebody else that I knew would know her number. Both of these people are extremely hard to get in touch with. They just busy. The first person I called grabbed the phone right off the bat. Sure, I've got her number. The woman at Texas Children that I was trying to call answered the phone right off the bat. I thought, that is a God wink right there. She said, that's not my area, but I know somebody. All of a sudden, I know somebody. That's what I've heard from Rotary here today. All of a sudden, doors started opening. Trevor gets phone calls from Texas Children from Ronald McDonald House. The doors are open. Come on. And she was not scheduled originally until he was coming in on Friday. She was coming in on Friday. That diagnosis analysis was not scheduled until Monday, the following Monday. All of a sudden, when she gets here Friday, they get in motion and all of the discovery and diagnosis was in full speed. Unfortunately, the baby was not strong enough to be operated on, so Trevor asked for a second opinion. It came back the same, so I did have a chance to meet with them on a Saturday, the following Saturday. And it was so, we had some tearful prayer time that was, I'll go to my grave. As a result of his email, USO sent that to the Houston airport system. They have a once a year recognition of people that handle baggage well and, just did all kinds of areas. And this was submitted for this annual event. And I hadn't registered. USO Houston wanted to make sure I attended. So the director called and said, look, you hadn't registered, you need to do that. And I was thinking, oh, probably this is just another, restaurant lunch kind of thing. So my wife and I attended, and they started naming John Doe, Mary Smith, one this. And all of a sudden my names pop up. And it was kind of the, for layman's term, volunteer of the year. They call it Spotlight Award. And it wasn't about me and the reward, it was about helping that family get their daughter hopefully treated. It was just a snowball event. So there's your 1 Peter 14 example. And Roger's got some of the similar stories, so I don't want to take up all of his time, so please share.
Being part of the USO is exciting, rewarding. Like your club, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be members for all these years unless you felt that it was doing some good. I was in the Air Force, Air National Guard, and during the Vietnam era, my unit, instead of going to Vietnam, was called up during the Pueblo crisis, and we went to North Korea. We went to Kunsan, Korea, where our fighter jets protected the 38th parallel because the North Koreans had captured our #1 spy ship. So I spent a year and I was a little sergeant and lived in a tent with 5 guys. And we have maintained our strong friendship ever since. Unfortunately, 2 of them passed away, but I'm still friends with 3 of them. All of us always have an annual reunion, and we share the same stories. They get modified. Unfortunately, we forget some of the bad parts, but somebody else will remind us, and so it's just fun. I mean, people you make friends with in the military, you if you're close to them, you stay with them for the rest of your life, and it's fun. And so during my business career, I was just doing a whole variety of turnarounds of companies and so forth. So I met Joe and got involved in a monthly poker group 25 years ago. And Joe introduced me to, he had been doing USO volunteer for a while, and I thought that sounded like fun. So we start going on a monthly basis to Hobby Airport. That has turned out to be the most rewarding, fun volunteer experience I've ever done. In that you go into the USO and we find that all the branches come through. On a given, our shift is usually 4-hour shift. USO has manned their facility right before the pandemic from 9 in the morning until 9 at night, comprised of 3 shifts. Now they dropped to 2, but they're going back to 3 again very quickly. And during that time, while we're there, all the branches will come through. And you'll get people. Just last month, we got a young man that was heading off to boot camp, starting his career. And in other times, almost every week, we'll get people that come through that have been in the service for 30 plus years. We had a master sergeant, a E8, which is a senior master sergeant, who had been with helicopters maintenance for 34 years. And we'll get people that come out of one of the military academies, and they're starting their officer career in whatever branch it is. And then sometimes what's nice is to hear how they take that military experience and transition it into civilian life. One gentleman was in the security force in the Air Force and security police, and lo and behold, today he is one of the 6 bodyguards to Ted Cruz and his family and children. Another gentleman has come through, and he spent 30-some years as an enlisted, but just his nature, he then went on to want to do church charity work for his retirement. And when you look on the computer and you find out what do they make when they start with an enlisted, not much, and by the time they get 18 years, depending on the rank and so forth, an enlisted man can, if he stays in and he's moved up the ranks toward the E7, E8 time frame, they make a decent living. They don't get rich, but they're making $75,000 to $100,000, depending on how long they've been in. If you're an officer and you go in, you're starting off as a second lieutenant, and you're in the $3,000 to $4,000 a month range. But by the time, if you stay in and you're a general, and now you're making more in the $150,000 range, depending on the number of years. So they don't get rich, but they're not poor. And then they get a housing allowance and so forth. But another young man we get many who are officers or pilots during the military, and many of them move on because we're at Hobby, so many of them become Southwest pilots. Or sometimes they'll take that time frame, and one man came through a while back that was covered all the various airplanes, jets, supersonics, and now he is flying the most expensive private plane for billionaires. It's a Gulfstream G70 that purchase price is $75 million. So he is now the pilot for billionaires. Well, I asked him, how do you enjoy that? And he goes, well, it's a life. I said, are they nice people? He goes, no. I go, well, you must have met one billionaire that was nice. No. He said, they are arrogant, think they can buy anybody off, that they don't have to follow anybody's rule. And he said, so I just fly the plane and let them do whatever they want to do in the back.
Tell
tell the story about the flight attendant.
So I was getting to that. So another one was on Air Force One as a Air Force flight attendant, maintaining whoever was president and first lady at the time. And so he goes all the way back. He went all the way back to Jimmy Carter time frame, and he was careful about his stories, not being derogatory, but he said Jimmy was not the teetotaler that everybody thought.
He was my brother.
Then he moved on up and was on Air Force One all the way up till the recent presidents, the previous president. And he said some of them were nice. Most of them were very, very nice, treated him. He said there was only one person who was the most nasty, arrogant, terrible, demeaning person, and that was Hillary Clinton. And he said she just was not a nice person to be around. But but in their life as they come through all the people as they come through, their decency is just outstanding. They'll come through. One time, a general, two-star general came in, this is last year, came through, so humble, so nice, we see their badge, and he wasn't gonna tell me what rank he was, and I saw that he was a two-star general, so I kind of quietly went back with him and just kind of asked him because he didn't want anybody to know particularly. And then about a half hour later, a young second lieutenant came in and went back to the area where the food was and was sitting at a table next to him. And then pretty soon I realized the two were talking back and forth. And then the general had to go up and leave. And I went back to the second lieutenant and I said, "Do you know who you were just talking to for a half an hour?" And I said, "It was a two-star general." And they have no idea because he was so humble, he didn't want to promote himself. And that's what I find in all the militaries they come through. They're just genuine, nice people. And whenever I leave, I'm always so glad that I spent the 4 hours and having met those people. And they all describe it like in the United States, we have 133 USO facilities. And the military, when I was in the Air Force, to go through a USO and stop there, it felt like it was kind of a semi-home away from home because everybody treated you nice. So yeah, if you ever get a chance to volunteer or think you want to for the USO, you will find it a very rewarding time. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much for being here and sharing that with us.
Thank you, Bill.
And